And can you all hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Good morning. We can see you. We can hear you.
Good morning. I'm gonna open my writing board. Good morning. Yeah, so are we ready to take off? Yeah, what we're gonna do beginning actually for the rest of this month is we'll be talking about we'll be looking at a couple of things here, very important. And you're gonna come across some of that, especially when you start putting yourself out for, like when you start applying for jobs, you will come across. Oh, by the way, for those that are watching me for the first time, my name is Emmanuel. I am the founder and CEO of T2S. This is the place where we train people to become cloud and DevOps engineers. And every week we will get to meet. We'll continue meeting together. And and I think I've told you that soon there's going to be a full, a complete course on how you can move from a beginner as as a DevOps engineer to being a master. So you're gonna have to learn about 20 plus DevOps tools. There will be some introduction to. So you're gonna have access to Linux because the Linux is the foundation of what you'll be using as an engineer, DevOps and cloud engineer. And also you will learn a little bit of AWS, and then the rest is just DevOps tools. So that course should be, God willing, live, up and live, sometime towards the end of this month here. That's my goal, and then probably even sooner. So it's gonna walk you through the steps on how. I mean, it doesn't really require you to have any IT prior experience. It just come as you are. So you take that course, and then you continue watching, joining everybody else with me as we meet every week, as often as possible, to continue looking at projects. So what we do, like today, beginning today, we'll be looking at what we call an e-commerce platform. An e-commerce platform, you're talking of something like Amazon, where you buy your stuff. You're talking about eBay. You're talking about a lot of things, like even Best Buy online. So anything online that allows you to buy stuff, and so there's an inventory. There's there's a way for you as a customer to see what you need, and then once you like what you need, then you can put it into a cart. And once you that's the checkout cart, and then you eventually you're gonna go to your checkout, and when you're satisfied with the product, then you buy it. And when you buy it, you receive an email say first you see something saying, "Hey, thanks for buying. Your product will be shipped very soon to you." So that's like a landing page. Uh, and then after following that, you're gonna receive an email with instructions about when you can expect to have your product shipped to you, and when you can eventually get it. So this is an entire infrastructure, and a lot of these companies, they use this approach here. So they use this. Amazon did it first, eBay, and then the list goes on. So that's what we'll be looking at. But today, I will just give you like an introduction of uh, what does it take to build something like this, something like Amazon, something like eBay, something like Best Buy. Sorry, it's Best Buy here. Best Buy, something like that. And then that would be number one. So this will be our first major project. And second one would be when you start applying for jobs. A lot of companies, they use what they call Active Directory. Has anyone ever heard of Active Directory? You can just unmute yourself, say something, or put something in the comments.
Yes, I've heard of, but I didn't study it that much.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it in the when I'm doing when I'm applying for a job.
Yeah.
Some of them are required to know the Active Directory.
Yeah. Active. Anybody else? Active Directory. It's a Windows-based tool, and I'm gonna give you an introduction this morning also. So we'll talk about that. It helps control your network, kind of like authentication on in your given environment, and also it helps manage users and systems in that specific environment. So we're gonna talk about that in just a few moments. So these will be two major things that we'll cover not only today but for the rest of hopefully by the end of the year. You guys will have a good grasp on how you can set up an e-commerce platform and how you can install and configure Active Directory on AWS, using AWS to create to even create a hybrid. So you create also a hybrid network. I would say hybrid. I would say environment. So we're gonna work on these two things. Let's start with Active Directory. Anybody has any questions before we move on? Okay, if not, then we're gonna move on. I'll share. I'll use a PowerPoint here. Use a PowerPoint to talk about these things here. So we're gonna begin first with Active Directory. I'll give you a PDF of this document, these two documents, and then what I want you to understand, and what I keep saying to everybody that I teach or mentor, it's that focus on the concept, because the concept behind e-commerce, that's, you can use it on AWS. We'll be using it on AWS. You can use it on Microsoft Azure. You can use it on Google. So technologies may change, but the concept is the same. And that's what I'm teaching you, and that's what I want you to know, and that's what I want you to remember. So remember that you have to focus on the concept, because that's very, very, very important. So let's start with Active Directory. So when it comes to Active Directory, give me a moment here. I want you guys to see me too. When it comes to Active Directory, I want you to and as I said, I'll provide you with this document here. And for those watching on social media, if you want it, you're gonna have to put it in the comments box. Send me your email and then send me an email and then your email address and then I'll send it to you. Setting up Active Directory for centralized user management. So what I want you to remember here, it's not every single word as we look at this document here. It's that Active Directory, you use it for when you want to have a centralized user management. And this could be in a mid-sized or large organization. But for you to use Active Directory, you're gonna need these three things. You're gonna need to have DNS. First, you need AD, that's Active Directory and domain service role to be installed. You're gonna have to install that first. Then you're gonna have to install DNS. What does DNS stand for? Anybody?
Domain name system.
Yeah, domain name, system or server. Okay, so you have DNS. You have to install that. And what do we need DNS? Why or what for?
It resolves names.
Exactly, for name resolutions. And what that means is that computers, they talk to each other using IP addresses, but we talk to computers using names, right?
Names.
So we name the same name we've named our people, our babies, our kids, our friends, or even nicknamed ourselves. We have also been naming systems. We give them a name, like a Mac OS Crooks or Chicago or something like that. So any name. Like we have Google.com, you have Facebook.com. Your computer connecting to Facebook will not connect to Facebook computer by the name. It will connect to that server using that server IP address. And now for my computer to communicate, because I'm telling my computer, hey, let's go using the browser. Let's go to Facebook. I'm not telling my computer, let's go to google.com. Let's go to 8.8.8.8, 8.8.8.8, I think. So that's one of the Google public servers. We don't say that. We just say, hey, take me to google.com. But for my system to recognize, to make sense of the destination of where I'm sending my signal or my request, it has to resolve that, saying, okay, google.com, what does that mean? You say, hey, yeah, it's 8.8.8.8. Oh, that makes sense. So you see, that DNS helps with that. So what about DHCP? So DHCP, that's dynamic host control protocol. It helps with dynamic. It's a server that you install on your system, or a feature that you install on your system, which will dynamically assign IP addresses to the systems that want to connect to your network. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So this is what it is. We're talking about AD, right? Which stands for Active Directory. For you to install this, you're gonna need AD, Active Directory, DS, Domain Service. You're gonna need that. That would be number one. And then number two, you're gonna need the DNS to be installed, and that's domain name server or service. Okay. And number three, you're gonna need DHCP, which stands for Dynamic Host Control Protocol. This is to resolve names. And then we're talking about names of systems or computers. And this is to dynamically assign IP addresses to systems that connect to the network. Like in your home, you have a modem. So every time you have a guest and they ask you for, what's the password again of your Wi-Fi? You give them the password of your Wi-Fi. That's the kind of like the door. You're giving them access to your network. And once they enter the password, they're gonna send a request to your system, your network system, to say, hey, I want to connect. And then when the system says, okay, it looks like they have the password, they have authenticated themselves. That's why we use a password. Now, the DHCP, which is also attached to your modem, to your system for your network at home, will assign an IP address to that cell phone or tablet or computer that wants to connect to your network. Does that make sense? So it's gonna assign that dynamic IP. And dynamic IP address means that the IP, what's the difference between a dynamic IP address and a static IP address? Anybody?
Yeah, dynamic will change every time you turn off and want to turn on back, but the static will stay even if you turn off or restart the computer.
That's point number one. So point number one, a dynamic IP address changes every time you disconnect from the network and want to reconnect. You get a new IP address. A static IP address, it doesn't change. And the second difference between a dynamic IP and static IP is that dynamic IP, it's an IP address that DHCP server assigns to a system. Okay, so it's automatic. When you want to connect, you authenticate yourself, then DHCP will assign you an IP address. A static IP address, who assigns that IP address to a system?
The administrator.
Exactly, the administrator will assign that IP address. We're gonna go through this. It's gonna be a very nice project, and part of this project, you're gonna learn a big component of Windows administration, because we're gonna set up a Windows server on an EC2 instance on AWS. So you're combining cloud and Windows at the same time. You see, so it's a very good skill to have, and then also to add to your resume. And then after that, this will take like probably just a week to work on this project. It's not a big project, but you're gonna make, yeah, it's an easy project. So this is where we are, and we're gonna install those three things, and this will kind of like give us an idea. This is like a walk through about in terms of the steps. So first we're gonna prepare the environment. As I said, instead of because you can do this on premises, meaning using a physical server or a hypervisor, meaning a virtual machine, or you can just do it on a cloud platform. And in our case, we can use EC2 instances, or just we can do it on Azure, but for the sake of our project, we'll focus only on EC2. We will install Windows Server on EC2, and then configure the Windows Server. By configuring the Windows Server, we set a static IP address, and then we join the server to the appropriate work group. And number three, we'll install the required features, which I've just explained to you: ADDS, DNS server, and DHCP. You know, what you're looking at here is if the company is looking for someone to help them someone who has experience and expertise on Active Directory on using AWS to set that kind of environment, and then a centralized way to manage users and systems. This is what you need to know. Just looking at this screen here, this is it. This is the concept. This is what you memorize. This is what you say to people. Every time they ask you about Active Directory, this is what you have done. And that the same process that we'll be using to do this on AWS, it's the same process you'll be doing pretty much when you do it on premises. Not very different. And this is what we're gonna do. We install the role, promote to domain controller, then we verify the configuration, and then we're gonna configure DNS and DHCP. DHCP will also help us define and configure the IP address range. So we can say, for this specific network, only these IP addresses will be granted access. Okay, so that's you define that using DHCP. And the last thing that we will do is to set up VPN. Has anybody ever heard of VPN before? VPN, yeah, what does that stand for?
It's a virtual private cloud.
Yeah, that's VPC. Yeah, VPC, that's for AWS, yeah. That's the logical, yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Virtual private network.
Exactly, virtual private network. Active Directory can help you do that. So you can embed that, integrate that into the process. And then these are the steps that we'll be using. We install remote access. We enable routing and remote access service. We configure VPN. And then number three, we create firewall rules, meaning that this is the port that will be open, which will allow traffic into our virtual private network. And then we're gonna test VPN connectivity. So what happens is when you get hired, and then this could be any job, could be IT or any remote job. Companies, they always have their own VPN, and they use Active Directory, as part of the process to set this up, so that people working from home, they connect to that private network using VPN. This is what you'll be doing if you're working from home. You cannot gain access to the resources of your company without joining that virtual private network. So there's always an application on your computer that will require you to first you open that application, and that application will let you first. It's gonna be like an authentication process. So you open that, and then it's gonna ask you probably for your password, and if they have MFA, which is multi-factor authentication, they may probably require you to enter. First, they send you a code on your phone, and then you reply. You use that to authenticate yourself. It could be anything that they may want to use, but this is kind of like the idea behind. And when we put our hands on this stuff, then it's gonna make more sense. Any questions? Okay, so moving on, and this is what we do when we have Active Directory. We can create, after we set up everything, then we create OUs, that's organizational units. You're gonna hear about organizational units even on AWS when you use when you set up AWS organizations. That's a service on AWS. You will also create some organizational units, and this is a way of grouping users, computers, and groups. Right? So you may have HR, you will have sales, you will have IT, and so on. And then Active Directory will also allow you to configure group policies, meaning these are GPOs, like group policies. They allow you to enforce security settings and standardize user environment. So you create a group policy, and you apply that group policy to just an OU, organizational unit. In this organizational unit, you may have some, departments and subunits, so they will all inherit those group policies. AD also allows you to create user accounts and assign them to appropriate groups for resource access. And then, of course, we'll test and verify the setup when we put our hands on this project. And these are the benefits of using AD that you guys can read on your own. Any questions? If no questions, I'm gonna move you to, we're gonna talk just a little bit. As I said at the beginning, I'll give you, this is like an introduction into the two major projects that we'll be working on. We have talked about Active Directory. So now let's talk about, and I'll share these with you all. Those joining as on Zoom, I'll put that on Slack. and I'll see how I can attach this also to this recording on YouTube as well. All right, so now let's jump into setting up an e-commerce infrastructure with Terraform. This will be our first project that we'll start working on as of next week. So we'll start with this one. It's an easy project, but again, as I keep saying to all of you, all of my students, all of the people that I mentor, is that you don't need to memorize the technologies, but you need to memorize the concepts. What's the concept behind this? Okay, so what does this mean? I mean, how do I set this up? Because you can set this up on AWS. You can set it up on Microsoft Azure. You can set it up on Google, IBM Cloud, or Oracle Cloud. You can set it up on a variety of platforms, and then using a wide variety of technologies. So you don't need to memorize the technologies, but memorize the concepts. Because you may be hired by a company A. They use this kind of infrastructure, and then when your contract has ended with company A, you go to company B, and they use the same infrastructure but different technologies. You see, so if you don't understand the skeleton and the process, you'll always be lost. You have to understand the backbone of this infrastructure, and that's kind of like my goal here. So I want you to understand the skeleton, and then when you talk about e-commerce, you're looking at one way. First of all, you have the back end, and then you have the front end. All right. For any application or infrastructure that you provision, you're going to need a back end and the front end. The back end, this is where you have the developers, you have people like you. And then the front end, you also have operations teams there, the team members of your company. But these are the people that interact with the customers directly. Meaning that they expose this application and they make it available to customers. And we're gonna go a little bit deeper as we go along. So the infrastructure interview would be you may use S3 to host your static website, and then this static website will be distributed globally by using CloudFront. Okay, so we're talking about AWS here. So S3, that's your storage, but instead of storing your data, but here you just make that S3 bucket to become your static website. So it hosts your static website. And how do people connect to your static website? That's something that you're gonna have to define. All right, and then to allow people to connect to your static website from anywhere around the world, you're gonna need to use CloudFront. Okay, so keep that in mind. S3 bucket to host my static website, and then CloudFront to allow people to connect to my website from anywhere around the world. Then you need the backend store. So let's say this website, I mean, since it's an e-commerce, you're gonna need inputs from your users. Where do you store anything that you input? All of that data, you're gonna store it on a relational database service, RDS. You're gonna store that there. It's scalable, it's very reliable, it's cost effective, So it's very resilient. So you have that. Keep that in mind. And now, when somebody accesses your website, and let's say you're asking them for their name, first name, last name, phone number, and so on. So how do you get that or capture that data? This is the processing, the form processing. It's a component that you can add to your infrastructure. But what tools do you use to do that? We use API Gateway. We use Lambda, and we'll talk about that as we go along. We use Lambda, and I use DynamoDB to handle user form submissions. And we're gonna talk about that as we continue working on this project. And then the other component of the infrastructure is multi-environment. So we use modular configurations so that we don't have to write the scripts for every environment. So these modules, they're the same in the dev environment, they'll be the same in the stage environment, and in the production environment. And just this slide can at least help you get started working on building an infrastructure like this. Any questions? All right. So this is kind of like what you would have. So everything is on AWS. You have CloudFront, very important, which allows people from anywhere around the world to connect to your website. And everything that they do, like when they purchase something or they put something into the cart, in their cart before they check it out, you get a notification. You can set your infrastructure to notify you that, hey, somebody put something in the checkout cart, but they didn't, let's say they don't want to act on it for 2 days. After a day, they can receive a notification in an email or a text message, say, hey, you forgot to check out your product. I don't know if has this happened to somebody? Probably yes, to most of us, right? You go to Amazon, you like something, and say, okay, I'll put it in my cart, and then you forgot maybe to check it out. And then after 2 days, you receive an email saying, hey, you forgot something in your checkout cart. And you can set that up easily. But at least what we have here, this is like a skeleton of what you need for this kind of infrastructure. And when you go through an interview applying for a job, you need to be able to explain this to them. To just say, hey, to set an infrastructure like that, so I'm gonna need these components. And this is what I've done. On one of the projects that I worked on, this is what I did. All right. And the key features of using Terraform to deploy an infrastructure like this one here is that you can, first of all, you have modules. Modules give you some environment flexibility, meaning you have separate configurations for dev, stage, and prod to ensure smooth workflows. And I will explain that next week when we look at the Terraform scripts that I have already written for this kind of infrastructure. Then you have the front-end hosting. You have S3 and CloudFront. That's the front end, all right? So that's these are the components that allow your users, customers, to interface or interact with your application. And in this case, it's a website. You have serverless form processing. API Gateway and Lambda, they are serverless. So you don't have to worry about the underlying infrastructure. You only worry about the code. Lambda, and I'll talk about Lambda when we get to that point. Lambda uses functions, and these functions are written in Python or JSON. So you can use these functions to define what kind of flow you want to follow. Like Lambda can help you. For instance, let's say there is somebody has filled out the form. So and then when they fill out the form on the website, right? And once it's done and they click submit, so this will trigger because the S3 will be communicating also with Lambda. It's gonna trigger an event, and this event will talk to Lambda and also provision that code. It's gonna run the code in Python that you will have written to say, okay, take this information and put it into a DynamoDB table. So that's the flexible data storage. So it's gonna go to the DynamoDB, which is a NoSQL database, and we'll talk about that when we get to that part. Any questions so far? As I said, I'll put this on Slack. You guys can take a look at this on your own. It's just a few slices or slides, not slices. I think yeah, it's almost noon here. I'm hungry. All right, so the script or the file structure that we will need for an infrastructure like this one here. So on the root level, we have T2S e-commerce there. That's the root level. And then the core components, we're gonna have modules. In these modules, this is where we have S3 buckets, CloudFront, API Gateway, Lambda, DynamoDB, RDS. And also we have environments. Environments, this is where we have dev, stage, and prod. Dev, this is where we develop our applications. We write codes. Stage, this is when the environment where we test and test and improve on our code for our infrastructure application. And production, that means that our application is accessible to our clients. Any questions? Okay, if not, I think I'm gonna go to the next slide here. You're gonna need Terraform installed on your system. You need AWS CLI because when we write the code for the Lambda service to use, we're gonna have to zip this code. We zip it, and then we should be able to use it. And I will explain some of those when we get to that point. Any questions? Okay, so talking about the deployment process, this is what we will do. The repository is already on GitHub. So you go to the you just git clone the URL of the repository, and after doing that, if let's say you're doing this in the dev environment, then you're gonna have to navigate and go to the environment, and then go to the dev folder or directory. And when you get there, this is where you initialize your Terraform, you review your changes, and then you apply the changes by using Terraform plan to review, using Terraform apply to apply the changes. Then you're gonna get the outputs, the CloudFront URL. The CloudFront URL will, this is what what your clients will be using, right? So this is like your domain, and this is the endpoint that they'll be using to access your application, your website. So you're gonna validate that, and then you have also the API gateway. You have the RDS endpoint. The RDS, you're gonna have to you'll get the login credentials and be able to get into your storage instances to see what you have there. Okay, so this is a process, and just reading this, and let's say you work on this even once, somebody can just wake you up tomorrow and say, hey, explain to me how you can set up an infrastructure like this one here. And again, because you understand the process, you understand the makeup of the infrastructure, you understand the concept behind every step. That's what you need. That's what you need, because on AWS you use different technologies, on Azure different ones, and Google different, Alibaba, IBM, Oracle Cloud, it's gonna be different depending on where what cloud computing platform you're using. All right, questions? Okay, all right. If not, this is what we have done today. We've talked about first of all e-commerce here, how you can set an infrastructure like this one here. So that's number one, and that will be our first project. So we want to work on that first. And then secondly, we're gonna work on AD, which stands for Active Directory. How we can do this. Let me see here. How we can do this on AWS. You see, that's kind of like, that's the plan that we have here. So we want to start first. Next week we'll start with this one here. We'll start with this one here, and then once we're done with that, then we will go to this one. And this, the reason we're doing this, a lot of companies today, if not, I mean, most companies, mid-sized companies and big companies, they use AD. And I told you that because they use AD, you will be able to take advantage of these services here. This is Active Directory domain service role. You're gonna have to install that. You're gonna have to install DNS. you'll install DHCP, and then you're gonna create your own VPN. And then VPN, it's to give your employees secure remote access. DNS will resolve names. DHCP will dynamically assign IPs to systems. So this is what you will be doing, and this is why this is very important to know. And we're gonna install it on an EC2 instance. So we install Windows Server, which you can do. You can install and configure AD, Active Directory, on premises, or you can also do it on the cloud. But we'll be focusing only on the cloud here. So we do that, and then we can join. Other systems to the domain. So, and I'm gonna show you how you can do that, and then this will give you some expertise in Windows administration. Any questions? The session will be short today. Any question? If not, I'm gonna take you to, you remember we talked about blue-green deployment, and I don't think I didn't do a video for you guys, but I plan on doing that sometime this coming week. My week was so fast, and I had a lot to do. So, but I'll finish that up for you guys. But it's if you just follow the steps here, just follow the steps. Gonna make it a little bit wider. If you just follow the steps here, you should be able to. So you git clone, navigate to the desired environment. It's the same process. Repeat the process. You do this for all of the infrastructure that you want to provision on AWS or any cloud computing platform using Terraform. So we're using Terraform. You're gonna navigate to the dev environment. You initialize, you plan and validate, then you apply. And when you do that, you're gonna have your S3 buckets. This one here, the blue environment setup, and you're gonna also have the green setup. After doing, and also Route 53. After doing that, you need to go now manually set up your CloudFront in AWS on the console. So you go to the console, and where you go, when you get there, and you follow these steps here. Follow these steps. Don't try to experiment something that I didn't mention here. All right, just follow these steps, and do not add the alternate domain names. Don't do that, and I'll remove it probably later. So don't do that. You do for the blue and then do it again for the green. When you go to, I'll show it to you here quick, just give me a moment to log in. So when you go to CloudFront, CloudFront is a service that allows your customers from anywhere around the world to connect to your system, to your application. So we're gonna go to CloudFront, and here we are. So we, like here I have already disabled these. So I have this. They should look like this one here. When you create the distribution, and follow the steps. A distribution requires an origin, and because that's where you want people to connect to, right? Information you want people to access, it's gonna be the origin, and the origin in our case it's gonna be our static website hosted on S3 bucket. And then once you have that, and this is correctly done, this is your domain. This is what you use when you go to the browser, and in this case it won't show anything. Okay, it will not show anything, but it's gonna show if you do it right, because this is the green. It's gonna show a green background with a text or message say welcome to the T2S blue green environment, and for the blue it's gonna say welcome to the T2S blue environment. So you have to get these ones here to something like this. I'm gonna delete this because I don't need them for now. And after you do that, make sure that you disable them. And then after some time, you're gonna be able to delete. You cannot disable and delete them at the same time. So, and now, so the thing is here, is what I want to share with you now. The concept. So we need an S3 bucket. We need an S3 bucket. And once we have an S3 bucket, this is where we host our static website. But then we have our customers here. We have our customer. This is our customer. And for our customer to connect to our static website, this is where we need CloudFront. And CloudFront provide a domain name. And it is the domain name that we will provide to our customer, saying, hey, this is how you can access our application. I'm gonna say web app. And then, remember, this domain name isn't really what we want, right? It's a combination of words and letters and characters that AWS provides to us automatically. So the AWS generates that. So let's say I want to say this is our product. And I want to use this domain here. And for me to connect that domain to CloudFront, I'm going to need Route 53. Route 53 will allow me to use a custom domain. for me to use a custom domain, I need to register. So you're gonna have to register a domain, or you can transfer a domain, or you can point to that domain. Let's say your domain is hosted on Bluehost or GoDaddy or Google.com or AWS or something else, Microsoft Azure, whatever host provider you may be or domain provider you may be using. So you have these options. You have one, you can register on AWS and buy a domain. Two, you can transfer a domain from another domain provider to AWS. And three, you can just point your Route 53 to that domain. And then, so the point is CloudFront, you're gonna have to go to Route 53, you create a zone, then you're gonna attach records to say, okay, you're gonna have to redirect traffic from CloudFront to this custom domain. So does that make sense to anybody?
Yeah, it's making sense.
Yeah, so the key point S3, this is where you have your web app. And then to have your customer get access to your application, you use CloudFront. And to use a custom domain, like you can say marineproducts.com, for instance. To do that, then you use Route 53. Then, after this, then you can add, here you add your storage component. And then you can also add the other serverless tag to process something like form. When you have forms on your website, you can do order processing. So this is where you use things like API gateway. You use Lambda, and what else? And this is where you use DynamoDB, which also works for that, as well as you use that. And what else? And you can use also something like SNS. Anybody can say what SNS stands for?
The Simple Notification Service.
Exactly. And this is also where you can use SQS. Anybody knows what that means? So you can use message queuing tools. SNS, that's for publishing, and SQS, that's for queuing. Okay, so, and you can add more, but these are kind of like the key things here: API, and that, and this, and this. All right, if no questions, I think I'm gonna stop here today. This was like an introduction, a big introduction to the two major projects that we'll be working on. And for the next few weeks before the end of the year. But before I close, I just want to encourage you all. I really want to encourage you all on the fact that things are opening up, companies are reaching out to people, and at the same time, a lot of people understand that IT is one of the few fields that can, in 7 months, you get trained and you can easily start with anything like this here. You can easily start with this over 100K, easily. And because of that, competition it's pretty much growing. A lot of people understand that IT, you can easily get a job. And then the number of jobs are also going up. And do you know why? Because technology, everybody needs technology. Two areas that I really want you to focus on. And that's the reason why I stopped teaching Linux. So there's a cloud, there's DevOps, and the new one is machine learning. Cloud will always be there because we host everything on the cloud now, most of the things, right? DevOps, companies will always need DevOps engineers. Machine learning, this is kind of like the backbone of AI, the artificial intelligence. It's also going. I remember a few months ago, there were a couple of people, I used to, recruiters, I used to interact with them like 3-4 years ago, and they, one of them or two of them, they said, "Hey, do you have some skills here?" I say, "No, it's on my list of things to learn." So it's very important. The other things that I want you to know and to really work on, take seriously scripting. So any way you can learn Python, like every day, just learn something. Learn something just every day. Learn something. Python, Java, and Bash. So learn these things here. Really. And this is the reason why, after doing a lot of work in this area, I discovered that the more you know, the better. The more you know, the better. And when I talk about to know, I am not just talking about to do stuff. Doing stuff, it's one thing, but knowing stuff is another. When I talk about knowing, it's mastery of skills. And this is what I'm teaching you. This is what I advocate for. I want you to master skills. Mastering a skill sometimes doesn't mean that you have already worked on that, but you already know the skill. I mean, you know the concept. So that's very important because you may have worked on a lot of projects, but if you don't know, you don't have any master of those concepts or skills, in front of a panel, let's say there's a panel, a company, a team of 3 or 5 people, they want to interview you on DevOps and cloud. They don't just want to know if you have worked on some stuff. They want to know if you know your stuff. And that is mastery. And that's exactly what I'm aiming at through my DevOps class, a course that will be live hopefully at the end of the month. And that's my goal. And I encourage you, strongly encourage you to begin working on your goals for 2025. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, write your vision down. Write it down. Where do you want to see yourself in 2025? Because you have to begin with to be, because this is it's going to define your becoming. It's going to define your doing. It will also define even what you will have, like possessing. So your focus should be, who do you want to be next year? Remember, being a cloud or DevOps engineer, it is a role we play in life, right? It is a role, and it can also be a means. So now the question is, a means to what? You see? So you're not just learning stuff because you want to be a DevOps engineer. Okay, so you become a DevOps engineer, cloud engineer, and then you make your first 6-figure salary. So you're gonna make it, and then so what? So that's the fundamental question you have to ask yourself. You have to ask yourself, what will really fuel you and give you enough strength and motivation to do this, to even become a DevOps engineer? You have to define this. You have to define, who are you? Who do you want to be next year? It's very important. It's going to give you a sense of purpose. When you wake up in the morning, you know what to do because it's about being. When you wake up in the morning, even if you don't have money, you have nothing, you're broke, because what you have doesn't define who you are, but who you are defines what you have or what you will have. It defines how you use your time, how you use your relationships, it defines everything. When you understand who you are now and who you want to be next year, you will have you will begin having and gaining some clarity about how should I use my time every day? What kind of people do I surround myself with? Who should I talk to? I mean, there are people that I talk to because I'm clear about my boundaries. They are my friends, but a different kind of friends. I see myself as a missionary. So there are some people that I talk to that they may call me anytime, not in the evening. Of course, they know that they can't call me in the evening because I'm not going to answer. It's just my time with myself and my family at home. And I know that when they call me during the day, I'm gonna answer, and I know what group of friends they belong to in my life, and I know what I can do for them and what I cannot do for them, because this is the kind of friends that I have. But at the end of the day, so whatever, at the end of the day, understand who you are and who you want to be tomorrow, who you want to be next year. So I'm gonna stop now, and if you guys don't have any questions, we're gonna end our session today. Then next week when we get together, we're gonna begin working on our first project. If you have any issues with all the other things or the projects on our YouTube channel, I'm gonna just take you there quickly before we close. So let's go to my YouTube channel here quick. So if you go to my channel, you're gonna see, let me see here, for some reason I can't view channel here. Yeah, so if you go to my channel here, you're gonna see a lot of stuff here, and you know, most of these things, they're like you see this one here, installing GitLab on a local machine, how to do that. It's like a 40-minute video, and you just go there and watch it and practice. It's 40 minutes. What you can do, what I always recommend you all to do is, first you watch the video and have a pen and a piece of paper, write the steps down. If you go to this one here, and a lot of times I may have something here to explain a little bit of what we'll be doing, but some other times I don't. But you can find the steps, like with this one here. You just go to this GitHub repository, then you can find a lot of things there. So you can do that. So this is just one way to show you, just take advantage of some of these things here. And you may come across a company and they're looking for someone who can do Kubernetes stuff here, and there's one video here, and there's so many things that you can take advantage of here. So, and then these are the recordings of our sessions. Like this one is from last week, so you can review this here on YouTube. For those who have been my students in the past, you can go to the Slack channel, and always post something there too. But here, this is your library. So come to my GitHub, look at some of the projects that I have here, and then try them. Just try. Make sure that every week you work at least on one or two projects. Just just keep learning every day. And then I'll tell you what I am learning right now. I'm taking some training over the weekend on Fridays and Saturdays. And I know a little bit of scripting, but I wanted to go a little bit deeper. So I'm learning too. And I paid somebody to teach me for that. So do that. That's one way to invest in yourself and also prepare for the future or future opportunities that may come your way. It's gonna be very, very sad when somebody reaches out to you and says, "Hey, they're looking for somebody with these skill sets in the same company probably you're working for," and then you say, "Oh God," because the point is, you may know AWS, but each company doesn't use all of the technologies on AWS. It may just be maybe they host Active Directory on AWS. And that's why they need a cloud engineer who knows Windows to manage Active Directory. And you'll be surprised. And they'll pay you 65 an hour. And you're talking there 120 or probably 125K a year. All right, questions? All right, if not, then you all have a good weekend. God bless. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you so much.
Man, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.